Yo, what's up? This is Splendid Radio on Pharcyde TV with my co-host, Jeremy Scipio.
Yo, what's going on, everybody?
And my old school, Domino from the mighty Hieroglyphics crew.
What up, man? So, what up? How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm glad we able. I'll go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, old school is right. We've known each other quite a long time, which is, a blessing that we both still here.
Yeah, and it's a trip because I've seen you on the road, and you know what? It's funny because I was thinking about the interview today on my way home from the office, and I was like, I've never kicked it with Domino in Europe. We've never, but you know what? We didn't kick it hard, but I did see you in France when we Deltron.
We were kicking it hard at the merch booth.
Yes,
Deltron.
Sir.
Whenever it was like Pharcyde and us, it was always like we was running around doing our thing. But with Deltron, since I wasn't on stage or nothing, I was, we were both manning the merch booth, and that's when we started to really have some long, detailed conversations. That's when I was finding out all the clearing up all the rumors.
Yeah, and I appreciate you too, man. I've thrown up my bat signal on a managerial level a couple times and asked you a couple little ins and outs. And you kind of like, gave me a little bit of insight. You gave me some insight. It was interesting. I want to say, you know what? I interviewed Tajay, and it was interesting because I had a question I had for him was, how did you guys end up on BET? Like, I was like, you guys were, independent record label, this, that, and the third. And at the time, that's when, it was a lot of money in hip hop. And so like to be on MTV, to be on BET, a lot of people were paying and doing all kinds of stuff. And Tajay was like, nah, man, it was Domino's insight. You know what I'm saying? He was like, man, if we had to fly out there, if we had to go out there, whatever we had to do, we get out there and we, and we kind of get the love of whoever, was on whatever platform, and they just kind of welcomed you guys on. At that time in like the 90s, what gave you the insight to as an independent label to even have the nuts to reach out to like a BET or MTV and stuff like that? Because they really weren't giving nobody no love. It was strictly about money.
Well, I think that, we could talk about all the indie, us being indie and on our own, but you got to give it up for the fact that we were on major labels in the beginning, and so because we had the success with Dell on Elektra and Souls and Casual and Jive, a lot of these calls to people that I was making, we already had the door cracked because of who we are. There was a name recognition. So I'd say we had an advantage over like the typical indie artist who was just starting out that way. And and to be honest with you, it wasn't rocket science. Basically, I just soaked up all the ways that Jive and the lecture were promoting the stuff that when we were on those labels. And so when it transitioned to indie, I just went about the way that I learned via watching how they were doing stuff. And there was some, because of the lack of resources, there was a lot of, kind of filling in the gaps here and there. But, basically, from it all started because I used to get, I would, once we went indie, I would hit up like a lot of my old school industry people who were still in it, like radio promotions people at Jive, like Al Listrom and Jeff Sledge. And basically said, yo, send me a radio list. And so when we put out our first indie 12-inch, I just went down the list. And some of the dudes in Hiero was on the phone, and we were like, yo, this is, Domino from Hieroglyphics. He's like, Domino from Hiero? Yeah, this is me calling. I'm going to send you this record. You know what I mean? So we were hands-on. It was mostly me, but every once in a while, whenever one of the cast would come into the office, I'd be like, yo, make a couple of calls at these radio things. They're going to be juice if y'all call. And so we was just kind of, doing it. And then at the same time, I would be on the phone and I'd be like, yo, we trying to get out on the road. Who throws the shows in your area? Because as you know, at that time, there wasn't no underground hip hop circuit like ended up happening now. It was basically either you were big and you were like on the Budweiser Superfest tour, or you were, someone who was really big, but there wasn't no underground touring circuit. And so in the late 90s, basically 96, 97, we started that working this by, I literally would talk to the radio promotions dude, the radio guy at, let's say, in Austin, Texas, and be like, yo, who throws the shows? And they give me that number, and I'd be like, look, we're going on tour, and we want to, throw it, and we want to see if we can do a show. And that's kind of how we started that circuit, is I just was calling, finding out who the local dude was. And there was a few people that I knew from previous relationships from touring, from, when we were on the majors, but mostly it was just like, yo, let me get the cat who's throwing the shows, the hip hop shows right now. And then that's how it happened. And of course it wasn't like, a great, it wasn't like a totally dope routed tour. It would be like 2-3 shows a week. And then we would find things to do during the off times, which would be like, yo, let's go to some of these record stores. Let's go and promote our stuff. And so we were able to kind of have a little bit more impact, shaking hands and kissing babies that way, because we had all this time off, and it was like 9 of us. And so that would draw a crowd or whatever, we would just try to hustle and go by radio stations any way that we could. And that's kind of how it happened.
Man,
that's how it got started.
I'll definitely say that Hieroglyphics kind of shaped how I got down, because it started Brown. We had came up to Oakland, I want to say, to do a show, and then Brown and I came over to one of the warehouses that you guys had, and I just remember seeing like a self-contained situation. And dude, in merch boxes, and like, in that, like, it blew my mind, man. Like it blew my mind. It truly, I was like, man, they're doing it without like being on a super label and stuff like that. Cause like, I was a homeboy before I started dealing with the management. And then as far as me like dealing with the management, it's kind of like a cat being thrown in the water and just kind of having to figure out your way and just, maneuver your way through it. But I will thank God for the love and hate relationship I had with the agency group. You know what I'm saying? that was a man. Shout
out to Peter Schwartz.
Yeah.
I'll give it to, you want to know the story about Peter, is that I met Peter when he worked at William Morris with Kara. He was Kara's assistant, and Dell was with William Morris, and so I just kind of met him. And then Peter cold called me, you know what I mean? And the irony of it is, we were on this tour, and I was like, man, we need more shows, And I can remember it like it was yesterday. We were at Fat Beats, New York, and I got a page, so the age herself. And it was Peter, and I said, God, I'm glad you called. I'm in New York. I'm gonna come see you. And he had just gotten his gig up there. And at that time, when we first got down with Peter, we were kind of like the big fish in this small pond. At that point, when he first started with the agency group, they didn't have no hip hop stuff. He was just doing reggae and us.
Oh wow.
And so he just happened to call, and I just was thinking to myself, man, this 2 show a week isn't gonna, that's not how we got to do it. We need a real, we need a tour where we're knocking every night, and so that's kind of how it happened. So he called, I don't know how I guess he heard from, some of the promoters, like, yo, these dudes was out here, and it's a small circuit, and then he just happened to call me.
Yeah, he reached out to Brown. It was kind of the same thing. It's like Brown was like, he always held relationships with whoever we did business with. Like, he would pretty much position me for me to deal with him, but he like had no problem getting
Making
somebody
that call,
cool.
right?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
get them cool enough.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
once it comes to the business, then he alley-oop it over to me, and
yeah,
then I deal with it. And with Peter, you know, Brown was like, it was probably like the late 90s.
yeah.
Lip and Trey were already doing their thing, and we were starting to formulate a situation with a band, and we had these dates, and the agency group reached out to us, and they were like, I see you guys got some shows. If you throw Ugly Duckling on, we'll give you guys some more shows.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you how old school it was. I want to say Abercrombie and Fitch was sponsoring. They came into a sponsor to sponsor the tour. You know what I'm saying? On a tour bus and the whole little ins and outs. But it was crazy because, you know, it was like Kara was like the upper echelon of hip hop, the Busta Rhymes and like all of that. But then Peter, he kind of got in where he could fit in. And man, that was my first time doing like 30 dates. You know what I'm saying? Hopping on a bus. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Going out city to city, really no break, you know, having to just kind of figure it out.
Well, one of the things that I learned from like that situation, right, is that really no matter, you know, you talk about like, you know, do you want, you know, people, especially young artists, are always talking about, I need a manager, I need a booking agent, you need this, and who's the best one, and who, you know, like, and I get a lot of questions like that. And the main thing I say is you need to find the person that is most going to advocate for you, because ultimately, right, it's really about that. Because, you know, especially in regards to touring, because, you know, we were with Kara Lewis too, and in fact, other than I think the tour that Souls of Mischief did with Pharcyde, it was the Log Cabin album and Soul's second album. In fact, Souls got dropped before the tour even started, and Kara was the one who gave me the heads up that they were going to drop, because she was trying to get support for the label, and they were like, "Nah, we're not even," you know, and so. But you know, like that's about all we got out of her. You know what I mean? And then you got a guy Peter, who had the same Rolodex, but he was in there advocating. He was in there grinding. And that's what you need. It's not really about the name. And particularly with touring, is that ultimately, you know, it's going to come down to who shows up. And it isn't really about who's the booking agent. You know, they may get you in that first show off of their name, or they may like, you're able to get nice opening slots with bigger agents, you know, where you can, but other than that, like your own tours, it could be anybody really who has the right Rolodex and who's out there grinding for you. And Peter was advocating for us. And you know, again, he didn't have, this is long before Macklemore and A$AP Rocky and what he ended up being. This was the beginning. We basically started together in a way because he had just got his gig.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, that's really important, is find somebody who's out there advocating. He was an assistant of somebody who was the biggest, and then
popping.
You know, he got it popping. He got us, you know. I mean, I always, you know, and so, you know, that's important, man. It's always important.
And you know, I tell people, like I've had people come to me and they say, you know, I want to be a manager, and what, you know, like what should I do, or how, or whatever. And I tell people, first of all, if you're not willing to put your own personal resources behind an artist, you're not made to be a manager, because a manager can see an artist and see where they could be if they had a little grease underneath the wheels. They could like you got to invest yourself in the artist. You have to. But for those people who feel like being a manager is hanging out backstage, inviting girls and pouring drinks and all that kind of stuff, it's like, man, that ain't being no manager. That's that's having a short-lived waste of time, and waste of money. You have to believe in what you're dealing with, and then they have to believe in you to a certain extent.
You know, I always say that an artist's first manager is somebody around them who advocates for them, because ultimately, right, is that, and it's normally a homie. It is, because if you get to the point that where managers are ringing your door, you know, they're going to ring your doorbell at some point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so until you get to that point, you need, you know, you can't, no one, it's very hard to get a manager who has a reputation when you're just starting. And so ultimately it's always the homies, you know, like you're around them, they believe in you and they're putting in their hard work for you. And then once you start seeing success, then you got all the, you know, the big managers trying to get at your artist. But ultimately, sometimes it takes that, you know, in the beginning to kind of get started because there's nobody else who's willing to do it other than your homie who believes in you, you know?
Yeah. So tell me this. When was the first time you heard hip hop?
Rapper's Delight on the radio.
I hear a lot of that.
I think it was K. It might have been KSOL. I think that was, or maybe KDI. It was one of the old school Bay Area stations. But yeah, it was Rapper's Delight was my first introduction to hip hop.
Yeah, I got a question from one of our listeners. So how you guys adjust to the current situation for Hiero Day this year?
You mean what we did or what we're going to do?
What you're going to do?
I mean, it's hard. It's a little early to say because it happens in September. But ultimately, I mean, you know, if things clear up, maybe it'll be in person. But you know, I think at this point, the plan is probably for it to be virtual. You know, and so, you know, but it's, you know, it's too early to say. I mean, this is when you got to start planning. But I'm not optimistic that by September, you know, hip hop shows in general are going to be back because, you know, like, you know, there's nothing more of a spreader event than people all packed in together, screaming at each other,
Sweating.
you know, yeah, sweating, and so it's like a germ tinderbox. You know what I'm saying? And so, I don't foresee it, but you know, Hiero Day is outdoors most of the time, so it's a possibility that it happen. I mean, fingers crossed, man, because you know, Hiero Day. The thing about Hiero Day is it's really one of those times where I'm able to go and walk through the crowd and really like reflect on what we've done. You know, because it's really, to me, Hiero Day is kind of a I don't know, it's an acknowledgement of the equity that we built in this game. You know what I mean? And I think that's how I feel every time I'm at Hiero Day. I feel like, man, this is the fruits of what we've established, the love that we still get and still have from the town, and also from, you know, people that come from all over. And that's, it kind of reminds me, that's how I feel. It's almost like an anniversary of what we've done in the game. You know, that's how I feel. So I pray that it will be in person this year.
At what age did you realize hip hop was your thing?
I think probably like 12, 11. I mean, it was probably like 82. Rapper's Delight was the first record that I heard, but the song that got me wanting to rap was The Message by, you know, Earth, Wind, Fire, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. And so like, that was kind of the thing that was like, yo, like, you know, made me want to rap. And then, you know, I started DJing a little bit. And so around that time, 82, 83 is kind of when I started to really kind of feel like, man, I want to do this, you know. And it wasn't about doing it professionally at all. It was just, I want to do it. I want to write raps. I want to do, you know, I want to DJ. I want to, you know, be into the culture, you know.
Mm-hmm. So while you were in junior high school, who did you think was the hardest hip hop group or MC?
Junior high school. Let's see, when did I graduate from junior high? Let's see, probably, it was probably, I mean, I think Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five was my favorite group. Up to like, you know, 84, 85. I think I got into high school in 84, 85. And so, so I'd say that it was probably still Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. And, Run DMC just started to happen, of course, so I was so into it that it changed every,
Yeah.
I was in the UTFO hell of, I was into a lot of like, West Coast, electro hop. So, Egyptian Lover
Yeah.
and LA Dream Team
Wrecking
and
Crew.
yeah, the Wrecking Crew and all that. So, and that was big in the Bay Area. And so like I remember like really getting into DJing around when it was like the hottest songs were like, Egypt and Rock Box. And it was like, I guess that's like 83, 84. But I mean, man, I dove full on in. So there probably isn't very much that I didn't listen to that was out and popping in the Bay Area at that time. And then, and I also remember when I got in ninth grade in high school, my freshman year, there was a cat named Vernon Gale who was from New York. And shout out to my man Vernon. We reconnected on Facebook. But the thing that was interesting is he was from New York and like literally looked like the rappers that I listened to, but no one else in the Bay looked like that. So he had like the leather coat and the Kango and the suede Pumas. And so, we had a class together and he started upping me on all this hip hop that wasn't happening in the Bay, like Fresh 3 MCs and Pumpkin and the Profile All Stars. And I had never heard of Chuck Chill Out. There was all this kind of stuff that he was, that was really happening in New York that they weren't really, they may have played like a few of these songs on K-Poo or whatever, but it wasn't like, it wasn't super popular in the Bay. And so I got an additional insight on the game from this cat who was from Brooklyn. And he I don't know, I don't remember why he was even in the Bay. He was there for like one semester and that was it. But I was soaking up all this kind of New York from him because New York was just this place that I saw in movies and heard about on rap songs. And so that gave me, that expanded my horizons as well.
Yeah. So, at what point did you realize that the Souls of Mischief, Hiero, and Deltron was a thing? Like, and when I say a thing, kind of like something that the fans kind of gravitated towards as like a cult type of thing.
Oh, I don't know. Like,
it had to be a moment, man. It had to be a moment.
Well, the first thing that sticks out to me, right, was we put Del had we put some songs on, and this is after Del has first albums out. And so we're doing the second. We finished 93 Till Infinity and Fear Itself, right? And a friend of mine, Jake Rosenberg, who had done he was shot video for the Plan B video. Well, he wasn't my friend at this point. He shot most of the Plan B video that had some Del song on it. I think Burnt was on it, and it was like a Plan B video that was really, was it Unquestionable? I forgot the name of which one it was. I think it was Unquestionable. But anyway, it was like a groundbreaking skateboard video on the Skateboard Zine. And it had, shout out to Mike Carroll, Sean Sheffy, all these cats were skating to Burnt and some other songs. And so basically, I didn't have anything to do with that, but they were going to do a second one. And I got hit up, and he goes, man, I would really like if you could give us some songs that are unreleased for these videos. And I said, well, we got some songs left over that didn't make these records. And one of them was a song called Souls of Mischief. It was called Souls of Mischief. And I believe the reason why I didn't, it was one of the demos, and then somehow the disc Del lost the disc or one of those things. And so we made another version, and it had the Leaders of the New School sample, always misbehaving and mischievous, And so anyway, we did it, and then we didn't like it as much as the first one, so it didn't make the record. So I ended up giving it to these to this guy, Jacob, to put in this video and a couple other songs. 93 Till Infinity, fast forward, 93 Till Infinity comes out, and we're doing in-stores. And so we're in the East Coast, and we're in Philly, and we do this in-store, and some kids come up, and he goes, yo, this album is dope, man, but where do I get this song, Souls of Mischief? And I'm like, huh? How do you know that song? From the Plan B video. We're in fucking Baltimore, in-store. Yo, this is dope, man. Y'all are dope. But where do I get this song, Souls of Mischief? You know, and I see, yo, somebody just asked me that. Like, how do you know? Plan B video. This happened like 2 or 3 more times. And then I realized the impact of the skateboard community and the following and their love for, you know, the things that they get into, they're passionate about. And it's because it's an underground thing, you know what I mean? And these songs weren't available, and they were early champions of Hiero. And so shout out to the skate community, because I feel like they were the first ones that I felt were those type of heads. And a lot of it stems from Javante Turner, who was a San Francisco skateboarder, and from you know, and him get, you know, he used to hang out with Del, and so he got his hands on some of the demos, and then, you know, they got dubbed, and that was like their little Bay Area, you know, skateboard scenes, you know, soundtrack to a certain extent. And then that's when I realized, that's what kind of got me realizing that there are some, you know, there's a certain kind of faction of fan that is super like cult, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so that was kind of the first tipping point where I was like, yo, these dudes is passionate, you know. And another thing I think also is when we started the internet, when we first started our website, when we first went from being on a majors to an indie, is that, you know, we realized how many people were still trying to find out what the hell we were doing, you know, and the internet was our conduit to them. Because at this time, we're talking about, you know, 95, 96, before, you know, most people were on the internet. And Tajay, who was going to Stanford, he had found out, you know, and so we basically, he had connected with the dude who had the Hiero fan site, shout out to Stinky. And basically, when I started interacting with some of these cats on Hiero Hoopla, and I realized how passionate they were about us, you know what I mean? Like, you know, they weren't like, oh, y'all felt, they were like, yo, when's y'all next? What y'all, you know what I mean? And I had this constant interaction with, and all of us had this constant interaction with these fans on the Hiero Hoopla. And it was like the early hip hop chat boards. And I was like, man, you know, like we got a following, like we need to tap into this. And that's kind of when I realized that there was, you know, kind of a allegiance beyond just because they saw us on, you know, they heard us on Cameo or, you know, saw a video on BET. I was like, these dudes is trying to find our unreleased stuff and anything that we've done, you know. Yeah. And so that's what I realized it. But I think the cherry on the top to end my long-winded answer is the first time I saw somebody with a Hiero tattoo. And I don't know when that was, but that was when I was like, whoa. And it ended up, we've seen probably 50 or more people who have Hiero tattoos. I mean, they're, you know, and then that's the ultimate, like, wow. To this day, if I see somebody with a Hiero tattoo, I'm still in awe and humbled by it. That's the ultimate. You know what I'm saying? And so,
hey, you know what? Having this conversation with you, there's a movie that I watch all the time. I'm like a creature of habit. Like when I do something, I just do it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I've been watching Get On Up, the James Brown movie. And this conversation kind of reminds me of kind of how, you know, as I move with the Pharcyde, how you move with Souls of Mischief, Hiero, Dale. Like, man, we had to make our own way, man. It was like all these record executives that were quote unquote our buddies and all this kind of stuff. It's like they made us feel a certain way. And then when we didn't pop off like the Busta Rhymes or the whoever's, we kind of had to find our own way, and we did. Like I'll say, for me, when I saw how the X gamers, because Hiero fans are usually Pharcyde fans usually Hiero fans. But when I saw how the X gamers embraced it, and we go to Whistler, we go to, you know, all these little snow towns and all this stuff, and you got these rich kids that are like, you know, snowboarding, jumping off of incredible stuff, riding crazy motorcycles, doing loop-de-loops and all that. And they're doing that to like Pharcyde and Hiero music, man. And that was like, that's a moment in time where I was just kind of like, okay, there is more than just your hometown fan or hometown consumer.
Well, I think a big part of it is that I think is the culture of snowboarders, skateboarders. And I think that they, especially at that point, right? Skateboarding to snowboarding was super underground for a long time, right? And so, you know, it was almost like it was in their DNA to go against the grain and not just listen to the popular stuff, you know, which is why like we was able, you know, we were the main groups that they wanted to hear, because maybe we were the ones that they weren't getting stuff down their throat. You know, they like punk. That's another thing that they always did, like punk. It's kind of like the counterculture. It kind of is the same. They kind of they see in themselves the artists that are similar, that are neglected, which is kind of how how skaters and skaters felt. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you know, everyone thinks that we're just vandalists and you know, they don't have no respect for us, and we're getting kicked out, and we got to do this on the under and be, you know, and so they kind of, there's some kinship that they get from artists that they view that are kind of in the same kind of going through a little bit of the same thing, you know? And I think that's probably a big part of it.
Were you surprised that EA approached you to put your music in like Tony Hawk and stuff like that?
Not really, because the first time that it happened, I forged a friendship, so age myself some more. The first Madden tournament was in New York in 94, right? And at that point, you know, now the Madden tournament has all these super famous people. And my shout out to my homeboy Glenn Chin, who was one of the heads of marketing over there at the time, right? He's from the Bay. And we met in New York for the first time. And at this point, this Madden tournament was just something small. And the main people that were in it were hip hop artists. You know what I'm saying? And so I forged a relationship with him. And then, you know, kind of like later on, you know, we had opportunities to get music into games, you know. And then the Tony Hawk one, I don't believe was EA, but you know, that kind of, it was just kind of made a lot of sense, because just like I said, like the skateboarding community, you know, really loved us. And so it seemed like that was natural. In fact, I probably felt like we should have been in more stuff, you know, but once the majors got wind that you could market and promote their artists through these platforms, then it wasn't as easy as before. You know, they wanted them to put their stuff. Before, it was hard for them to get clearance for using this music in these videos. You know, but then once the majors realized, well, wow, this, you know, look, you know, this has an effect, then they started taking over most of the slots.
Yeah, I actually, I've been playing Grand Theft Auto since 2001, and that's how I got hip to artists like Sean P and Royce the 5'9", and you know, even Aguilar. This is all these rappers I'm like fans of, but you know, they weren't on any major radio station or anything like that. But as you see Grand Theft Auto the way it is now, I mean, it's almost like, you know, it's like the biggest commercial thing, so they only gonna pick like the top. But it was just like a cool way to get exposed to, like, you know, artists like that. But yeah, you're right. Tony Hawk was Activision.
Yeah, Tony Hawk. I think it was Tony Hawk 2. And you know, like, you know, luckily, you know, there were these platforms, because again, like, that was one of the reasons why the indie, you know, there was like kind of like a you know, kind of like a golden era, basically late 90s for the indies hip hop scene, and a lot of it was because of these songs being in, you know, getting some light that they normally wouldn't have gotten because, you know, you didn't have the resources that the major labels did. And so because we were getting these opportunities, it definitely helped so many indie artists who are indie kind of flourish, like some of the ones that you named.
Was the were you working with Dale when he made the Gorillaz song?
Yes. Well, I was managing him. At the time. Yeah. I mean, the story behind that is crazy. I mean, it's like basically me and Dan, the Automator, you know, we're good friends. And me and Automator met for the first, well, I met him a few times, like at record stores, because we're both from San Francisco. And I, you know, met him around, but we first kind of really forged a friendship when they wanted Del, him and Prince Paul wanted Del to get on the Handsome Boy Modeling School project, right? Their first one. And so he comes out with Prince Paul and into Oakland, and they record Del for that. And then me and Dan get to talking, and I realize that he lives down the street from my mother in Bernal Heights. And so after that, we just started kicking it hard, you know, because I'd go to my mom and be like, I'm gonna go down to see Dan, you know. And so that we forged a friendship. And so, you know, he ended up doing the Deltron 3030 with Dan through that relationship, just me and Dan shooting the shit and just him getting ideas and us making it happen. The Gorillaz one came after. So he hits me and he goes, yo, this guy from Blur, Damon Albarn, I'm doing a project. I'm doing this record with him. It's a project. It's a side thing for him. You know, I don't know how big it'll be, but it might be big in Europe, you know, and maybe you'll see some publishing, who knows, you know. And I go, all right, yeah, let's do it, you know. Can you, and we're doing it in Jamaica, right? So maybe Del, so I hit up Del, and Del's like, I ain't going to Jamaica. So I'm like, oh man, Del don't want to go to Jamaica, you know. And I'm like, damn, you know. And so basically I go, you know, hit me when you get back. Maybe we can do something. So Dan gets back and he goes, yo, I still want to get Del on this song, right? And so I'm like, Del, you want to, you know, let's go to Dan's. And, you know, and at the time, Del was kind of on this, like, I don't want to do shit. And so he goes, no, I'm not going out. I'm not going over there to record. So I'm like, okay, damn. I'm like, Dan, you know, maybe we'll let's just go to his house, you know. So we drive, and basically Dan brings an 8-track recorder and basically records him in his living room. Now I think at this point, I don't remember what song it was. It turns out, according to Dan, that it wasn't Clint Eastwood. It was the other song. There's a song called "Rock the House" that is also on the Gorillaz record. So they do that one, and he wants Del to get on this other one. And basically, I believe Del ends up doing it at his house. So anyway, nobody knows that this is going to be a big project. Nobody. We start talking about publishing all that, and you know, there's no, you know, they give us pretty much what we asked for. It's not, you know, and you know, those who know the story behind the Souls of Mischief and Jive and the publishing and know that we're very serious about our publishing, you know. And so basically, you know, that's that. We dot all the I's and cross the T's. I don't even think we got a lot of money up front. I don't think it was anything. Then next thing you know, this is a smash record. It's a huge record. The singles Del, you know what I mean? Like this smash record. And the funny thing about it, I don't know if it's funny, it wasn't funny at the time, is Del didn't want to be a part of any of it once it got big. And so they were asking him to tour, to go to the MTV Video Awards. Del said no to everything. They toured and they had other rappers rapping his part. Not his. I don't think they said his verse.
No,
but
they
were
just
rapping
did other lyrics over the.
Yeah. This is back when the Gorillaz show was a screen, and you would just see them. You would hear them playing behind the screen and seeing the characters. But Del literally literally turned down everything. Damon called him, Dan called, everyone called him. Jamie, the artist, well, you know, Del loves the artist. Let's have Dan. And Del was like, no, I'm burnt out. I don't want to do nothing. And, you know, and me as his manager at the time was like, bro, this is what we fucking, you know, did these $500 shows and 4 of us in a hotel room to get to this. Like, this is the payoff. Let's make this money off this. You know what I mean? And I couldn't get him to do it. And you know, it's interesting. And interestingly enough, the first time that Del ever performed Clint Eastwood with Damon in them was at South by Southwest, and was probably like,
I remember.
It was yeah, I don't what year was that? This is when Snoop came up. It was y'all were there. It was
because
was there.
We did a show and the Souls came to our show. I don't know if they performed before us, but I know that we did a show and Prince Paul was DJing the show, the little thing that we did. Yeah.
It was at the Fader Fort. If I had to guess, I'd say it was probably like 2016 or something, because it wasn't even a Gorillaz thing. It was a Damon show.
Yeah.
It was like a Damon show. And so basically that was the first. So you're talking about 15 years later is the first time that Del ever gets on stage with them. And they asked a lot of times, you know, and then they just gave up on it after a while, you know. and so yeah, man. So that's kind of how it happened. And I will say that the fact that we dotted our I's and crossed our T's when we got the paperwork done has more than paid enough dividends. You know what I mean? So the early kind of teachings that my mentor, Michael Ashburn, an attorney, used to tell us about, you know, make sure you handle all the business, because you never know when a record's going to pop. And luckily we did, and Del's pretty much taken care of because of that.
Dude, I'll tell you my quick little Gorillaz experience. So we had done, Danger Mouse was on this, Danger Mouse was being managed by the same guy who managed the Alcoholics at a point in time. Mm-hmm. And he was doing this, it was a Danger Mouse and Gemini record, and he wanted the Pharcyde on it. So he wanted the Pharcyde on it. So he comes and we talk on the phone. He shows up at our studio in Koreatown at the time, and he says, you know, I'm on this label from London, and you know, they're giving us a little bit of money, but it's not a whole lot of money, but can you do a song? So I'm like, okay, let's work it out. We get the paper and the paper, you know, right or whatever. So the guys record the song. So when they record the song, the record label is like, well, the song is cool, but we need another song. Now I'm like, well, are you gonna pay us for another song? And they're like, well, we really can't pay you for another song, but you know, we want another song. So I was like, nah, we can't give you another song. So about 8 months later, Danger Mouse calls me up and he's like, dude, I'm back in town. And he's like, can we chop it up? And I was like, cool, come by the studio. So he comes by the studio and he's like, man, I apologize for that whole situation. Because my thing was, one thing Brown taught me on a managerial level is, if somebody comes at you with something that not necessarily disrespectful or whatever, it's nothing wrong with just cutting the conversation off. Like, you don't you don't have to go down the rabbit hole. Like, man, if they're not saying something that is conducive to your situation, you don't have to be rude, you don't have to be whatever, just, you know, leave it alone. So he hits me up and he's like, yo, I have an opportunity to demo a song for the Gorillaz. And I was like, because I guess the guy who was on the record label ended up being like one of Damon's best friends. Like, they owned a record shop together, they owned a bike shop together, you know, whatever. So, or something like that. So my first thing, Brown never really liked to, like, it being solo or just being out front really wasn't his thing. So Imani was like the go for it guy, whatever. So I was like, okay, let's get Imani. And so then Danger Mouse was like, no, you know, Damon has this idea for a song in his head, and he wanted the guy that started off passing me by. And so I was like, okay, I'll talk to Brown. So I go talk to Brown, and I was printing shirts for George. I was printing shirts for George Clinton. And so Brown was like, don't worry about it. I'll go to the studio, because Danger Mouse had a studio up in Mount Vernon. He's like, I'll go to the studio. I'll take care of it and just whatever. So Brown goes to the studio, and I don't know if he came back that night or if he called me in the morning, but he's like, dude, I just did this song. And he's like, dude, there was so many guitars and so much stuff going on. And he was like, man, it was like a difficult thing for me, but you know, I did it. So whatever. So we're in Australia, and I get a phone call, and it's Danger Mouse, and he's like, you know, they really like the song. It might be the single. And I told them to give you XYZ, and they're going to give you some publishing. And I was like, and it was crazy to me, because it's like, I didn't even have to fight for it. But the thing was, Danger Mouse felt bad that he had to ask, because it wasn't him asking for 2 songs. It was the whole way from the label. And so that forged a relationship with the Gorillaz. And I could say, man, at the time that they were doing like that album Demon Days was going on, I would say that's when I really learned a lot about production, what a real label behind the project is, and just all that, because it was like they spared nothing, man. Like, and when I say they spared nothing, I'm talking about for the animation, they were having hard drives flown back and forth and all kinds of stuff or whatever. So anyway, I say that to say, man, I say that to say I had a great time with the Gorillaz run. Like, man, I was on it immediately.
Yeah, see, you know, you had the benefit of that. There was the second album. You know what I mean? And so that was good. You know, it was like once you have a multi-platinum, they got to keep that up. And I love the second album so good. You know what I mean? And so I didn't get not just because of that, but the first album, I really honestly don't think anyone knew that it was going to be so big. And of course, Del made it so we never found out how living that life was. You know what I mean? Because he didn't want to go and fly out and do this and that until 20 years later. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's always great. You know, it's good to be involved with, in with projects that obviously they're successful, but you know, ultimately, like later on, getting to like know a lot of the Damon and a lot of the people in his circle. You know, I think they're all really good people. And so, you know, I kind of, you know, Jamie, the artist, who I think is always, you know, I think he's underrepresented as far as how much a part of, you know, the success had to do with him. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, you know, I'm proud of that. I'm proud that, you know, also proud of the fact that I pushed to Del to do it, even though no one knew it was going to be big. And that was had a lot to do with the relationship that me and Dan had then and have to this day, to where, you know, he wants to get stuff done in regards to Del, and I always make sure that happens, just because, you know, we got that type of friendship to where he looks out for me and I look out for him, you know.
Well, this brings me back to that night in France. And the crazy thing, like, okay, so I knew of Del the Funky Homo Sapien.
Right.
I knew of Hiero.
Right.
And of course, you know, I know the Souls.
Right.
I put it on everything. When you guys did that show, I was in awe. I knew nothing about Deltron 3030. Like literally, and that's so crazy, because it's like so for me, one thing I learned dealing with the Pharcyde was, like, before I started managing them, when I was just a homeboy, I would say stuff to them when they would come back off the road before I dealt with them. And I would say, well, man, you know, how's this song doing, you know, in Atlanta, or this song doing whatever, but it wouldn't be a Pharcyde song. It'd just be like any song that was blowing up in LA. And they taught me that there's a such thing as like regional songs. And so just because something is popping in LA doesn't mean it's popping in New York or Texas or San Francisco or whatever. It could just be a regional, you know, like a regional bubble. But when I saw Deltron, I was a fan, man. And not a fan because I was you guys' homeboy or whatever, but just listening to the music, the samples, the loops, just like all of that stuff. And I was truly at awe. Like I had never, it's like Deltron was something I was oblivious to. How did Deltron 3030 happen? Like what brought that together?
Okay. Rewind back to what I was saying about how Dan lived, you know, down the street from my mom in the city. And so we would hang out a lot. And maybe, I don't remember the year, but Del was asked to do a song from a sound this again, it goes back to the skateboard magazine culture. I think the magazine was called Strength Magazine. And it was like a, you know, skateboard type of publication. And they did a compilation, and they hit me up about getting songs from Del. Did a song, I think Souls might have did a song. But the song that Del did is called Cyberpunks, right? And this is before Deltron, before Gorillaz. He did a song called, and Del already had characters, Deltoid and Deltron. He always had, like he always had different names for different ideas, and sometimes he would do something with them, sometimes he didn't. We actually had some t-shirts with a character that he called Deltron, right? And so he does this song called Cyberpunks, and those of y'all that don't know it, it's probably on YouTube. It may be, we might have put it out on like Hiero, something on it. May be, you may be able to find it. And basically, it's kind of the precursor to Deltron. It's a song about the future. It's a song about, he didn't say anything about Deltron. So anyway, he had just did this song. The funny story is that me, Dan, and LP from, at the time, I guess, Company Flow, now Run the Jewels. And again, my friend Jacob Rosenberg, we're in the city going to strip clubs, right? So after the strip clubs, we go, what's open? Well, Mel's Diner is the one diner that's open. So as they go into order, I go, me and Dan are still in the car, and I go, oh, Dan, yo, I want you to peep this song that I did, that Del just did, that I think is really dope. Throw it on, and Dan loves it. And Dan wanted, he's a fan of Del's anyway, and he had done, like I said, the Handsome Boy Modeling School stuff, but Dan's like, yo, I want to do a project with him. And it ended up being basically based on the fact that Dan, or not partly based on the fact of me playing that song for Dan, because that was the theme. It was like a futuristic, kind of, science fiction-y type of song. And then I basically said, yeah, let's do it. Told Del, he was with it, started bringing Del down to Dan's studio, and it just went from there. And it just kind of happened. Now, what you should probably let people know is that this France tour that you were talking about is like 2015.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is basically 1999, 2000. This is how long before you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so Dan had, so we put out the record. He basically all credit due to Dan. Del put down vocals. Dan did a lot of the, you should maybe write about this. He kind of like helped conceptualize it. I was there a lot too, kind of, we were like throwing him ideas and saying that works, or maybe make that the hook, but Dan had a big part of what Dan did was he kind of formulated the story and just was like, Del, make a song about this. Now make a song about me, and that's kind of how it happened. and the beats were just like basically sounded so cinematic. It went so perfect. So Del did his vocals, and then, we left, and, it was multiple days, but let's say we were done. And then about a month later, maybe a few weeks later, I'm hanging out with Dan. He goes, yo, I finished the record. You know what I'm saying? We're rolling around. He plays it for me. And it didn't sound nothing like how it sounded before. Some of the samples I remember, like, oh yeah, that was one I liked. But he flipped it. You know what I'm saying? He made it into what it was. He got all the extra guests, all the skits, all that stuff was all Dan. You know what I mean? Most of the titles I think were Dan. And so, basically he gave, made a palette for Dan, for Del to kind of write to. But then after that, he morphed it. It was pretty much Dan's vision, at the end to kind of make it what it was. And it was another thing that came out indie, and it had a lot of success, but it was very underground. There wasn't anything on the radio. They did a couple of videos that were like some animation, but it wasn't like super high budget animation. And, but it got a cult following. It got a cult following. And so then you go over 10 years later, they do a second record. And again, from that first record, we toured for 10 days and that was it, because that's all Del would agree to do. And he didn't know any of his lyrics at all. And so he pretty much freestyled. I don't know anyone who basically out there who was at one of these 10 shows, but Del literally freestyled the entire show. Like didn't say the lyrics to any of the songs as they were supposed to be, because he didn't know them and he didn't want to learn them. And so we did 2 weeks and that was it. And they never toured again. And then here we are, fast forward to where France, that's like one of the first tours that of the record after it was up for the second record, And so you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think what you saw, one of the reasons why it was impressive is that there was a full orchestra, I believe, in France.
It wasn't a full orchestra.
Oh, it wasn't the full. Okay.
Guitar players, but I was about to go to the next one, dude. One of my top 3 moments in hip hop. No. Live performance. Mm-hmm. Maceo calls me up, and De La's performing at this party, a private party for these guys that are throwing this festival. So I go hang out with Maceo. De La does a couple of songs or whatever. Not on, like, literally they performed for like, what they performed the next day on the big stage, but I guess they performed at this little like Italian restaurant in Long Beach. And then I leave the Italian restaurant hanging out with De La, and then I walk over to Deltron with the orchestra in Long Beach.
I remember running into you that day.
And I was like, damn. Yeah. That was like the cheer. And then what made it my best night of live, one of the top 3 nights of live performance was after leaving De La, then checking out Deltron with the live orchestra. I walked 5 minutes away and saw the Specials perform. And that was incredible, man. Yeah, that was was a night to me.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, I think one of the things we were trying to do with that live show, and, I was just more on the management side, not just with Del, but also managing, Deltron, co-managing Deltron, I guess, with Dan's manager. But, like we wanted to somehow express the cinematic aspect of the record, and so we felt like that was one of the ways to do it, was to kind of like go full orchestra, to kind of so people could feel. There's nothing like seeing an orchestra live.
Strings.
And so it's like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like, and it was like a 16 piece. It wasn't a full orchestra, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just it puts a lot of power behind the music. And so it really was a way to kind of express that drama that the record kind of has.
When did you produce your first beat?
Let's see. I don't know, man. I guess probably 89. Basically, I was rapping. I used to rap. But basically, I was saving up to get a sampler. And so I had a job. I was fresh out of high school. Had a job. And I saved up to get I bought a Casio FZ10M rack, which is a rack mount sampler. was like the rack mount version of the FZ1. And basically it was like at the time, it was like, it had like maybe 30 seconds of sampling time, which in that era was a lot. You know what I mean? And so I just started messing with that. And I'm sure that's when I mean, I had to be when I made my first beat. You know, I used to like, you know, my partner at the time, a cat named Jason Melton, he was pretty much producing most of the music, but I always had a lot of say in the stuff that I was rapping over at the time, you know? And then when I got the sampler, I started to become more in love with producing than rapping. And that's kind of where the transition went. But that sampler is probably when I made my first beat, you know, actually physically made my first beat. And yeah, I mean, that had to be because I never owned any other equipment before that.
A couple of questions from the chat. The skate video, the Plan B skate video was called Questionable.
Yeah. It's either questionable or, I think questionable. I was thinking either that questionable or unquestionable, but I think it's questionable.
Yeah, he was saying that that was the.
Oh, he's saying that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, he said that's what he said that was pretty much what started hip hop being involved with skate videos just in general, like that they just like they all had to copy that.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, I learned later on, and I'm not a skater, so I learned later on that the tricks that they were doing in that particular video were groundbreaking. And that's why it got so popular. And obviously when you're like, same thing with video games, you're repeating this over and over, you're watching this over and over. So that soundtrack is part of it, you know? And so I see, you know, cause cats were seeing these things that Mike Hiero and all these cats were doing and were trying to replicate it. And so they were listening to these songs over and over as well. And so like, I found out later on, like, it was like literally like, it's like one of the Bibles of street skating, you know, those early Plan B videos. And you know, man, you know, we're really lucky, you know, because it wasn't, you know, Del hung out with Devon, you know, like I said, he hung out with skaters. Javante Turner is what I was trying to remember, but and so we were kind of connected to that scene, but none of us skated. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it would kind of happen just kind of almost by accident, not accident. It was just kind of organic. You know what I mean? Like we weren't trying to be in the videos. Their songs were, like I said, were like floating around that scene and it just kind of happened. And thankfully for us that we were on something that was so impactful in the skating scene.
Another one is Hiero going to evolve into an organization that will bring new upcoming artists, or will it always just include the current roster?
I mean, we've had a lot of other artists on Hiero Imperium. We put out various, you know, artists other than Hiero. Where it is,
Homeboy, he blew up as an actor, ridiculous actor.
Oh yeah. Ali, Mahershala Ali. Yeah, he was on.
Oh,
Hiero.
Really?
Yeah, his first indie record was on Hiero. What was the name of his group though? It wasn't his name. It was damn. What is the name of his group?
Wow.
It's called
artist. That's crazy.
Yeah. If you look online, you could see him. There's a few videos of him. He did a video too. We did a video with him. It's called Curbside something. I forgot the name of the group. I mean, you can find it on Google, but yeah, he was somebody that we put out. You know, we put out other people. We put out like OC, who isn't a new he wasn't a new artist, but we released him. We did female artists, Guapale. We've done you know, we've done a few here and there. Now it's hard to say because the industry it's changed so much that it's you know, it's a little harder to kind of be able to afford to break new artists. You know, so much of it is dependent on artists being able to establish kind of a name on their own via social media and via all the different channels that, you know, people find music on. And so, you know, I don't know if it's kind of worth it to kind of like continue to put out, you know, artists through, you know, through Hiero Imperium, but you know, we're always, you know, kind of listening to new people, and you know, I'm always big on co-signing and like putting people out on tour, you know what I'm saying, with us who I feel like have similar aesthetic. You know, Little Brother was one of the ones that we took out on tour. We were their first big national tour. You know, so we've done that before, you know, to where it's just like, yo, you know what? These are dudes that we kind of co-sign as far as the type of hip hop they're doing. They're new. Let's get them out there so at least they can touch some of the fans that we touch and be heard. And also Hiero Day is, you know, we put on all kinds of new and upcoming artists. A lot of them have ended up popping since we put them on. And so yeah, we are always open to, you know, getting new artists exposed to new audiences. It may not be through us putting out your record per se anymore, but we still support that. Is it curbside service, the Mahershala Ali? I don't know. I still got y'all?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The picture, one of the pictures.
Oh, yeah, it is. So tell me this.
Mm-hmm.
MPC or SP1200?
I'm a MPC guy. I never rocked with the SP1200 because I started producing kind of the next phase of that. And so like, but I will say this, the SP is its own sound. And so like, if you hear a beat off of the SP1200, you know it's from that. And those drums smack because they're SP drums. And so the MPC doesn't have that sound. It's very rare that you're going to listen to a beat and be like, yo, that was made on the MPC. But you can listen to the SP and be like, that was made on the SP. And so I think ultimately, for me, it's the MPC as far as usage. But I would have to say that hands down, the SP1200 is the superior as far as what it means to hip hop. Is the superior device for sure.
For me, SP, especially James Brown type of drums, they just hit hard. Them snares, just everything just hitting hard. Now on the MPC, one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, period. Dilla sampling the Rhodes on the MP and playing it on the MP. Sampling the Rhodes and playing it on the pads of the MP.
16 levels. Yeah, he's 16. Yeah.
That was, while he was doing Lab Cabin, me seeing him in the studio do that. And me, I don't know anything about music. I'm just a homeboy hanging out. You know what I'm saying? But what he was doing was so amazing that I was kind of like, whoa.
So suddenly Greg took our audience for wanting to hear your story a little bit more detailed from anything that I want to say. That's for sure. Let's hear more about Dilla in the studio recording Log Cabin. I'm sure all the people that are tuning in will concur with that. Or maybe that's the next episode for you. It's like, oh, Domino, what? Let's hear about Jay Dilla making the beats on the MP for Log Cabin.
Oh no,
nah, man. The people into you, man. They up there tearing up the chat right now, man. They ain't asking about those.
Okay. Not yet. Maybe ask me about a song that I made. There you go. Let's make it more for all the heads that are into beats and producing. Maybe I can. Maybe somebody want to hear a story about a particular song and how it was made and the story behind it, because I got those all day.
Well, actually, one person asked, what was the first beat that you made that made an album? That made it to an album.
Okay, that's a double answer. The first thing that I ever did that made an album, but I didn't really make the beat, I just kind of was adding things, was the song Del's Eye Examination. And basically, I had just met Del, and he had made he was trying to do a B-side, and he had made these demos, and it was a 3-song demo, and one of them was Eye Examination. He had made the beat, and I loved it. And so now Dell's needs to make this B-side for a 12-inch for the first album. It's for the first album. I don't remember what particular 12-inch it was. Maybe it was Dr. Bombay.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes, so I was at his house and he needs a studio, and I happen to be the one who calls. I'll call, I'll find some studios. And I probably ain't known Dell but 6 months at this point. For 6 months, maybe a little longer. But so I call and I get the studio. The one studio that returns my call is Hyde Street Studios in San Francisco, right? So we go and I bring my stuff because I don't know, you know, he may do a couple of songs, and I'm still haven't put out nothing. So I'm hoping for Dell to go, what else you want to do? You know what I'm saying? I'd be like, well, I got some beats right here. You know what I mean? So I was waiting for the opportunity. And so he tracks Eye Examination. And then I say, it'd be cool if you rolled. I'm still trying to hustle myself into this song, you know? It'd be cool if we added a drum roll here. I got a dope break that would be cool to, you know what I mean? And so there's a bunch of drum rolls. There's a drum break. There's some weird music at the end of the song. There's some vocal talking during a bridge. All that stuff is stuff I added. But it wasn't, you know, I didn't produce the song. The song was done and it was basically Dell's work. But that was the first work that I ever added to something. And I didn't get any credit for it, and I didn't need to. I just was there trying to be a part of it. And so I added a few little elements to it. But as far as a song that was a beat that I produced that got released, I mean, I guess it had to be something on 93 Till Infinity. I guess the 12-inch, That's When You Lost. The B-side was Let 'Em Know, which is the first song on the record, ended up being the first song. That's probably the first song that I ever produced that came out that said produced by Domino. Let 'Em Know, which was on the 12-inch for That's When You Lost.
I believe there was some colored wax to that.
Yeah. Blue.
Yep.
In fact, I think I have it. You see, I got like a bunch of records. I think I have that vinyl somewhere back here. You know, I won't.
That was rocked at the Pharcyde Manor. Very heavily, man. Very heavily.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I always tell the story. I always remember we did let's see. I can't find it. It's in here somewhere. For some reason, one of the earliest memories, I'll tell you a story about how I met the Pharcyde, right? Where I met these cats. Gavin, 1992 maybe.
Oh, wow.
And I basically go up to Paul Stewart's hotel room in wherever the Gavin was. I guess it was at one of the Union Square hotels.
Where it all happened.
And they're on. I walk in and they're jumping on his bed, and they're like rapping, but like literally jumping on his bed like how kids do, like kind of off the walls, you know what I'm saying? Jumping on the bed. I'm like, who are these cats? You know what I'm saying? And I want to say I might have heard their music before then, but I'm not positive, because here's a story. When we started sending out demos for Casual, right? One of the dudes who got a hold of this demo was Rock B, who used to be a college radio show host in, I want to say it was maybe San Jose. And he somehow he gave it to Paul Stewart and someone else. I don't remember who the other person was. It was a dude who ended up getting a job at Capitol. I forgot his name. But anyway, they got interested, and they were like, yo, you know, we want to, like, you know, come down to LA, blah, blah, blah. And at the time I wasn't managing Casual. I just had a lot of songs on the demo. I did a lot of the songs on the demo. So I was like, Kaz was 17 at this time. He's like, yo, these dudes want to bring me down. Maybe you can handle it. Like I just was kind of handling it because I was older. He goes, I'm going to tell them that they need to bring you down too. So we fly down there, right? And we end up staying at Paul's house in Hollywood somewhere.
I stayed at that house.
Yeah, and we were like, but it was like no hotel. We were like on his floor. You know what I mean? Like,
on the couch. Yeah.
And so he starts playing me these Pharcyde demos, and I remember it was Your Mama. It was, I think, a song about the policeman,
officer, and Pass
Me By. But Passing Me By didn't have the final verse. It was everything but the final verse. There she goes again. The phone, that verse wasn't on there. It was, and I remember we wanted and I literally dubbed this cassette. You know what I mean? And I remember playing it, and then that was my first kind of turn. I was like, yo, these dudes are dope. You know what I'm saying? And then we ended up meeting them later on, but that was kind of like I'm to be honest with you, I don't remember whether or not that was before the Gavin or after the Gavin. And so, but I kind of want to say it was before, because I think when we saw them at the Gavin, I kind of knew these are the dudes that were on that tape, because that's why I remembered them. Otherwise, they would have just been some dudes that some rappers jumping on somebody's bed. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So,
what's the best advice you ever received?
I don't even know, like there's a couple of things. Like I think one of them was there's a lot of things that determine what was it? Let me get this correct, otherwise it's not going to sound as profound as I feel it is. There's a lot of variables in the industry that you don't control that allow you to be successful, right? One of the things that you do control is how hard you work. And so make sure that you knock that one out of the park, you know what I'm saying? Because the rest you have no control over. And so that's the one that you do have control over, you better, handle that. And that's the one that always sticks in my mind. Another one that always sticks in my mind was told to me by Narder Michael Walden. And for those of y'all that don't know him, he's a producer. He's a great drummer, a producer. He used to produce Stacey Lattisaw. He did her big record. He did shit for Whodini. He did Freeway of Love for Aretha Franklin. He's done a lot of stuff. And basically he's local, or he stayed in the Bay for a long time. And I remember talking to him at a party in the Bay and him telling me that we had a discussion about what was number one. And I think it might've been, we were talking about R. Kelly. This is when R. Kelly and I was talking about, I don't really like R. Kelly. And he goes, well, where's this record? And I go, number one. He goes, are you in this industry? And I'm like, what do you mean? Are you in this industry? And I'm like, yes. He goes, I'm going to tell you something Quincy Jones told me. He goes, you may not like the number one song, but it's your job to find out why it's number one. And I was like, and at the time I was like, but whatever. But as I got a little bit more mature and in the indie, because I was just beginning at that point, I was like, yeah, he was right. You may not like it, but you better figure out why it's number one. At least know that much. And I was like, damn. Like later on, I'm like, man, that's super game. That's the beyond game, beyond wisdom.
Your top 4 MCs, nobody in Hiero.
Oh, y'all are tough. I mean, my goat is the R, 18th letter. Rakim by far is my favorite MC, and I think he was the dopest.
Been coming up a lot lately.
Huh? What'd you say?
He been reaching number one a lot lately on here.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll explain a little bit of it. The reason why I think that, besides the fact that he's just lyric, you could talk about lyric for lyric, but you could also talk about impact, right? And how MCing changed pre-Rakim and post-Rakim. I think that's one of the things that's most important about when you assess. And when you you can listen to a lot of songs from that era and be like, oh yeah, he sounds like he's from 87, 88. But those lyrics, they transcend for me. He's definitely number one. One I definitely put in there is Ice Cube. Again, not just the storytelling alone, and also, again, impact. Even though he wasn't the first gangster rap song, a lot of people feel that Schoolie D and then Ice-T, but then you get to how NWA changed the industry as far as where everyone wanted to be gangster. That's all Ice Cube. And the stories that, he's one of the best, him and Slick Rick, probably the best storyteller MCs. And he shows it because he ended up writing movies. But Ice Cube, I feel like, is a little underrated for how great he was as a rap, storyteller, an MC. And so he's definitely in my, what are we doing? Top four. I'm gonna have one go to the old school. I got to say Melly Mel. That just, I think Melly Mel was, of his era, he is the GOAT of his era. And he made you know what? One of my favorite verses of all time is the final verse on The Message. A child is born with no state of mind, blind to the ways of mankind. God is smiling on you, but he's frowning too, because only God knows what you'll go through. You'll grow up in the ghetto, live a second rate, and your eyes will sing the song of deep hate. The places you stay in, where you play, looks like one great big alleyway. You admire all the number book takers, thug pimps, and pushers in the big money makers. I can keep on and go on and on, but that verse is crazy. It's so visual. It's so visual, man. And then to talk about putting your baby in the garbage can, but the muffled cries of a crying baby are enough to drive the young woman crazy. She ran in the rain to try to ease the pain. She drove herself insane. That's from New York, but. That Melly Mel's way. I think that those who are from old enough to remember know that Melly, but as it's gotten farther away from his heyday, I don't think he gets his due anymore. When people talk about some of the greats. So that's three. Let's see. I think I'm trying to not have them all from old school. But that's when I came up. But I think that Cool G Rap is one of them. I think the best thing that I would say anybody that don't know Cool G Rap, there's something online where Black Thought is breaking down his verse, his raps on Road to the Riches. Look that up and listen to how Black Thought is breaking down every little line. And I've always thought G-Rap was dope, but that made me go, wow, I didn't even delve that deep like Black Thought did. Let's see, another one that I'm a big fan of is Redman. I think Redman is just an incredible MC.
I said performer too.
Performer, his energy, everything, his expression, his lyrics. He picks great beats. I mean, Redman is one of them. And, a lot of times it's easy to not go, well, I ain't trying to say the ones that everybody says, but you got to give Jay-Z his due. You know what I mean? He's got dope lyrics, he's dope. And so, I'd say that based on that, his impact, how long he's been dope, and how long he's put out good records, I'd probably add Jay-Z. So let's just say Rakim, Melly Mel, G-Rap, Redman, and Jay-Z.
Are you took Ice Cube off?
No, oh yeah, okay. I did too many. Now Ice Cube's. I got to keep Ice Cube on. So yeah.
Nah.
So now I got to keep Ice Cube on because it ain't. You know what? Another thing about being an MC, it isn't just about being the dopest lyricist. It really isn't. It's like, how you tell a story is a big part of being a dope MC. And I think that
Yeah.
Cube's impact, Gangsta Gangsta, changed the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, people lost their mind after that song. And
Yeah,
so
Tupac, he cites Ice Cube as teaching him how to be gangster. He said he wasn't gangster before he listened to Ice Cube.
yeah. And so I definitely say Rakim, Cube. I guess see it's not fair when I'm going over. So and I hate people to do that when you go, give me your top 5 and they name 7. I'm gonna keep it at 5. So I'm gonna go Rakim, Cube, G-Rap, Melly Mel, and Jay-Z.
Jay-Z.
So I took out Redman. Sorry, Redman. I'm still a huge fan.
How did Ecstasy from Whodini passing affect you?
Man, it affected me a lot because, that's, like the music, you could always talk about the best eras, the best music, but I think hands down, anyone who's in their teens, the music that affects them when they just are becoming adults is gonna stick with you more than anything. And I think that those first few Whodini records, man, were like really, really influential. I mean, and so when he died, like I couldn't listen to his music for a while. Like, normally when an artist dies, I like listen to their shit the next day. It'll be, oh, that's all I'm going to listen to. Like with Doom, that's what I did. Like I was just listening to hella Doom. But like for some reason I couldn't do it. Like it was making me sad even thinking about playing it. And so yeah, man. And if because I went to the Fresh Fest at the Oakland Coliseum when they was one of the groups, and they rocked it harder than anybody. And one thing that I want to point out, and it's funny because me and Pep Love had just talked about this literally probably 2-3 weeks before he passed. And Pep Love had asked me, is it true that Jalil wrote all the raps for Whodini? And I'm like, yeah, it is. But the thing that was amazing was how Ecstasy said them so well. He said them better. He said them better than Jalil. And the way his voice, the way he just kicked them so much better than Jalil. And those are Jalil's lyrics, And the thing is that I think that was one of the things that they did for hip hop is they made it to where, in the beginning, the black radio was super anti-rap. You know what I'm saying? Because all these program directors were all from R&B. They're all from the R&B years,
Jerry Curls and Leather.
Huh?
I said Jerry Curls and Leather.
Yeah. And so Whodini was the first group that kind of was able to bridge the gap to where their songs were melodic and they had hooks that were strong and that was accessible for a lot of black radio at the time. And so that was the first taste that a lot of people got to where, from hip hop, because those songs were so. Shout out to Larry Smith who did those beats, did all that music. R.I.P. He was a musician, and the musicianship on those records and the hooks are incredible, and man, those songs stand the test of time up to, like you listen to those records, they sound great now. Friends, amazing, sounds amazing now. One Love, amazing.
Hey.
Amazing.
Hey.
So man, taking it back to me doing management, you doing management, me doing some road management, you doing some road management. With this whole COVID thing, man, honestly, I think it's going to take about 4 years before people are on the road really doing it. I mean, I see people doing little stuff here and there, whatever. I say 4 years. They keep baiting you. They keep dangling the carrot in front of you, and you hopping towards it, hopeful and all this, you know, but before festivals where you just like, I'm sure I've been to some 30,000 people festivals. I'm sure you've been to some large festivals. In your mind, where do you see social interaction going in the next 2 years?
I'm a little bit more optimistic than the 4-year outlook, but it's going to be a while. I definitely think 2022 is probably the earliest. You know, like, again, I think it's probably going to start, you know, they already starting to do it to where they're having like, you know, people, you know, social distance shows, outdoor social distance shows, but that ain't, you know, people, that ain't gonna last very long because that doesn't give you the feel of,
you want to smell sweat.
You want to jump and you want to get that feeling that exhilaration you get from artists, and sitting down social distance doesn't give you that. And so I that's what'll start, but I don't know. Like, I can't foresee what is going to be the breaking point that is going to allow us to get back to where we were. You know what I mean? Like, I guess if everyone is, they're rolling out this shot, maybe, when it goes through out long enough where they find out this thing is working and lasts a certain amount of time and people start becoming immune, but that's going to be years probably. Just to get everyone the shot is going to be 4. Okay. I'm going to say lower, Chuck, lower. I'm going to say 2 years, but I'm not super optimistic. And that's really, it makes the job for you and I who job of how we're going to, what we got to think out the box of how we're going to, get this money's back still. And, I was, when the shutdown first happened, and like when there was all this big things happening with like D-Nice and how he had his little DJ thing, and people, I was optimistic. I was like, oh shit, this could be a money-making aspect of how we survive. The problem is that it doesn't take but a week or so of people getting all that shit for free, which means they're not going to pay for it. And so that was the key. I was like, okay, this D-Nice, what he's doing, and all these DJ, like, now how are they gonna monetize this? That was the first thing I thought. How's this thing gonna be monetized? And it never really truly got monetized. And part of the problem is that they started cracking down on the songs that you could play online. And then, if you're gonna monetize it, then you're gonna have all these labels that are gonna want to get their money too. You know what I mean? And so it's just tricky. And so, I think one of the things that I'm looking into is more of subscription model stuff. You know what I mean? Like Patreon and stuff like that, to where you basically are focusing on your hardcore fan base to pay you a certain amount of money, every month, or pay your artists a certain amount of money, and then you give them content that they can't get otherwise. One-on-one interaction with the artist, maybe some, for people that are other artists, some instruction, like, do a song with Dell, or you know what I mean, or whatever, new unreleased song, merch that you can only get. I think that's probably one of the ways that I think that I'm looking into, as far as a way to still maximize the fact that we have fan bases that are itching for things, maybe like a show, basically a live show, but it's almost like they're paying a ticket fee, you know what I mean, to watch you. But again, it's not the same experience, so that's not going to last. You can maybe do 1 or 2, but probably not much more than that. So it's really about giving the fan base content that, you're talking about the super fans, I guess is the term, content that they want. They want more one-on-one, closer interaction with the artist. And now my artist is sitting at home, and we're sitting at home, so we got to give them a little of that. And maybe they'll be willing to pay $5 a month or $10 a month to get that, And so that's one of the main things that I'm, looking at right now.
One last question. Why is Mama's Gun better than Baduizm?
I tweeted that, I think. Yeah. I'm like, how do they know I think that? That was the thing I was just thinking. Like, how do they know I think that?
Some research about it.
I just think that the record is just a way just a it's just a better record to me. I think that she finds herself. I think in this one, I think the Roots Cats, and I think there was a bunch of people that got associated with the second album. I don't remember exactly who, but I know that Questlove was one of them, and maybe James Poyser. I'm not sure who was, but I just think musically it's stronger. The songs are stronger. I think that the record, I think the real test now to me is listen to both of them back to back and which one sounds better now. And I think that Baduism, it was groundbreaking at the time. It was different. It was a little bringing back a lot of what a lot of us wanted from soul. And I think it's great, but I think she finds herself on Mama's Gun, and I think that the record holds up better.
That's a hard one. I ain't gonna lie, bro. I'm looking back and forth
Well, that's a good question, right? If it's easy to determine, it's and it's all subjective. But for me, it's really about the test of time. Is that I just think that the songs on Mama's Gun just hit me for longer than a lot of but like there's obviously like songs on Baduism that could be the best song on her catalog. So I'm not saying that. Like Other Side of the Game, like that's an amazing song, right? And I can't say, oh, this song from Mama's Gun is better. But I just think as a whole, as an album, it's a little bit stronger all through, and it lasted a little longer for me.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think you're onto something. It's just, whew, I mean, you got Bag Lady. You got Bag Lady. You got Didn't You Know? You know what I'm saying? You got some, but Baduism, that's a hard one to beat. But
So tell the truth. The question was you, huh? You read the tweet and was like, oh, he's tripping.
I was like, man, that's like Baduism was a movement. You know what I'm saying?
It was, and that's why a lot of people feel that's the stronger of the two records. But I feel like the second one, I feel like the second one is the one. And I'm not saying it to take away from the, it's almost like the people that think that Nas' second album is better than Illmatic. There's a lot of those too. You know what I mean? And it's like, if someone says it is, I don't think they're taking anything away from Illmatic. You know what I mean? They just have their
That's
reasons.
very true. That's very true.
Yeah, it's they're equally five-star records, and so I certainly didn't tweak that to take away from Baduism. I just think that it's the one that gets a little bit more hype, but I think the second one is better.
Yeah, it's funny. Nas comes up in every episode of this of Splendid, and we almost got out of here without Nas coming up today.
I was thinking about him when you was asking me about my top five.
Yeah, that's my number one.
Yeah, I mean, I could dig that. I could dig that. I just, I could, that's not one that I can argue against. You know what I'm saying? I can't argue against that. But maybe I'm a little older than you, and I'm more into the dudes who really influenced Nas, which is G-Rap and Rakim. You can tell, he influenced him a lot. I mean, he said as much, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so maybe a lot of that is my age, to where, I was in my teens when Rakim dropped, and it was very impactful, to where, I was already, 23, 24 and in the industry by the time Nas showed up. And so, that could be something.
I agree with every word you said about Rakim. Like through with. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said, but I think to the T, when you was so on point when you was describing Rakim just in general, to the T.
You know what? Have you peeped that intro on Busta's rhyme that he's rapping on? Listen to Busta's new album has an intro song.
Okay. I thought you were talking about some old school shit. No. Man,
That's Rakim today. That's how he's kicking today. Listen to that verse.
Yeah.
And he came out in 86. He came out in 86.
Yeah.
What year is it?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
30, we're 34 years from My Melody.
Yeah.
Right? And is my math right there? Yeah. 34 years. For 86 to now is 34 years. And listen to how he's coming in 2020 and tell me he ain't the GOAT.
No, you ain't lying. I remember on The Watcher Part 2 was Jay-Z, Dre, and Rakim. And, you know, Rakim, man, he had an album sitting that everybody was waiting for. It never happened. And, you know, that verse dropped. I'm like, man, that's crazy. His verse, I mean, look, I don't want to get in the competition, but it definitely overshadowed Jay-Z and Dr. Dre. You know what I'm saying? It's disappointing that we don't get an album from him.
Have y'all peeped the rap, that song on G Dep's album with him and G Rap and G Dep? It's very underrated. A lot of people don't know it. G Dep, you know G Dep, who was on Bad Boy. That
of course. I remember G Dep. He went to jail.
Song, he's dope. That song hit. There's a song on the G Dep album. I think it's called Something of the Ghetto. I forgot the name of the album. There's a song with Rakim, G Rap, and him. It's called
Cool G Rap and Rakim. Wow.
I mean, that's a while ago, but yeah,
it's called I Am.
I Am. Yep. It's a dope. Another dope one. Yeah, man, Rakim hands down. Like I don't think there's a close second for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard for me to pick the rest of the top 5, but not number 1.
Well, nah, man. Good looking out, Domino. I appreciate you tapping into the bat signal thrown up. You know what I'm saying? You've always been a cool cat. Like I said, you know what I'm saying? I've reached out to you a couple times to get a little cheat code for this for this direction or that direction, and you never was stingy with the knowledge. You know what I'm saying? So
never. You know, like I feel like, you know, people always, you know, each one teach one, and everyone that I cross paths with most of the time were very free with you know, teaching me the game, because, you know, when I started, I had no experience whatsoever, and so I feel like, you know, it's just part of my makeup. You know, hopefully I can pass it on to others. And you ran well with it too, so you should be proud of yourself, man. You know what I'm saying? Whatever little piece that I had to do with it, man, I'm humbled. You know.
Oh man, all good. Anything you want to shout out? Any projects? Any ins and outs? You want to give your Twitter, your Instagram?
Yeah, I'm Hiero Domino on everything. So if I'm on anything that social media, I'm Hiero Domino on all of it. HIERO DOMINO. And you know, for now, we'll keep the projects a little secret. There's a few in the works, but you know, hopefully, you know, we'll see soon. There's a lot of things. One thing I will say is we're working on possibly you know, a Deltron 3030 animated series, but more like not a kids thing, like more of an adult thing. So that's we've went through. It's gone. You know, we're working through the process. We're still a ways from it, but it's looking like it's going to come to fruition. You know, like, and not like just something online, but something on a platform. And so look for that.
You, Jeremy, anything you want to shout out?
Hey man, look, honestly, I just want to shout out. This chat was going crazy today, man. I think thanks to you, Domino. I want to shout out. Was it Cheems, DK? There's 11. Who else? Jake from State Farm. I might need your advice on some stuff, Jake. Vincent Cobelt. Alien is
Vince,
here.
My brother.
Yeah, Vince was tearing it up, man. I'm sorry.
Vince is my man. Let me talk about Vince a little bit. Me and Vince go back. I always tell this story. I'm sorry, Vince, I got to do this for you, but me and Vince got lice together. That's how long we go back. We got lice together. Me, him, his brother, all got lice together.
All heads.
That's crazy.
You know what I'm saying? Yo, I'm gonna tell you, real talk. 80s boxing. His pop's house was the spot. You didn't even have to call. You just knew that there was a big fight. Hagler, Hearns, Tyson, Spinks. You know what I mean? You just knocked on the door, and the whole neighborhood was watching the fights. And so that was Vince's house. And I lived 2 doors down. My brother Vince, I love you.
Yeah, Vince. Let's see, Tyrone Gaines and
Narbonne, old school homeboy.
You see, is that it? Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I just wanted to shout. Oh, Thomas Holmes.
Shout out to my brother Breakbeat Lou.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he verified your entire list. Yeah, but yeah, that's it. I just wanted to shout those guys out because was throwing they hat in the ring, whatever. But yeah, ain't nothing going on with me. So
Yo, no, thanks to everybody who tuned in, man. I like doing these things because, especially I ain't got nobody to talk to, man. I'm at the home with my twins. I'm talking to them. They don't want to hear about hip hop. Who's the best MC? So at least not yet. So yeah, thanks for everyone for tuning in.
And I want to dedicate this show to LA vet, OG Al Jackson. He passed away over the weekend.
Yes,
man. That's one that is different than a Doom hit or an Ecstasy hit because I've met Doom, but I didn't know Doom, and then I've been in the same space as Ecstasy. But Al, he's the first dude I heard play a rare groove. You know what I'm saying? At a house party. You know what I'm saying? So sending out some cool vibrations to the soul children and all Al's folks, all his peeps. Well, no, man, good looking out, Domino. I appreciate everything. Thanks, Jeremy. And this was